Okay, we're going to begin the second unit with the Mishnah Gimel and Mishnah Daled, the first parak of Masachet Yoma. So last time we learned first two Mishnayot dealing with the preparation of the Kohen Gadol as he would leave his house and get ready to come to the Beit HaMikdash a week before Yom Kippur and begin to prepare by doing the avodah, bring different korbanot during that week. Mishnah Gimel continues talking about what they would do to prepare the Kohen Gadol during that week leading up to Yom Kippur. So the Mishnah begins as follows: Masrin lo zikenim miziknei beitin. They would gift him, they provide for him zikenim, sages, literally old people, or a sage, miziknei beitin, of the zikenim of beitin. You have the Beitin HaGadol, the great Sanhedrin, the great leaders, and from them, from the greatest sages of Bnei Yisrael, they would take some of them and set them aside for the Kohen Gadol to be with the Kohen Gadol during this week. So while he was there, he had these zakenim with him. V'koren lefanav b'seder hayom, and they would read in front of him from b'seder hayom, with literally the order, the seder hayom of the day of Yom Kippur, as we'll learn hopefully some at least, of the order of all the different korbanot that were brought. A number of different korbanot, chatat, olaz, musaf, all the different korbanot, and the Kohen Gadol had to know very well exactly what he was doing on Yom Kippur. So therefore, as preparation, these zakenim would come, and they would read in front of him the order of the day. They would learn together the halachot, exactly what has to be done. Of course, it's from Parshat Acharimo and Vayikra, Parak Tet Zayin, where the Torah discusses these halachot, and that's what they would read from the Torah itself, and then describe, explain, etc. Everything that he would do. So that's the beginning. Again, the zakenim would come and read in front of him the order of the day, what has to be done. But omrim lo, they would say to him, in addition to reading in front of him the psukim and explaining it to them, Ishi Kohen Gadol, our little Ishi, and Ish is a man, right? My master, a respectful way of saying the Kohen, of referring to the Kohen Gadol, Ishi Kohen Gadol, Kra ata beficha. You should read in your mouth, meaning it's not enough just to listen to us, but you yourself should also read from these psukim explaining what to do on Yom Kippur. Why? Shema shachachta, o shema lo lamanta. Perhaps you forgot, perhaps you knew about it, and you forgot about it. Shema shachachta, o shema lo lamanta. Maybe you didn't learn at all. Maybe you don't know these halachot. A couple of interesting things come out of this. First of all, the fact that it's not enough for a Kohen just to hear from someone else, just to be told what to do, but rather they tell him first, they teach him first, and then after they teach him, they then go ahead and they make him repeat it on his own. This is an important principle that we have in Torah in general. If a person wants to know something, understand something, and really internalize it, it's not enough just to listen to it, but rather one has to bring it out of their mouth, one has to say it, one has to verbalize it, one has to be engaged actively on their own in order really to learn something. It's a very important rule. Very often we sit back and we listen, we think, oh, we understand what someone said, I got it, and then it comes later and you don't really know it that well, you haven't really mastered it. Very often, if you don't have a chance to say something, to explain it to another person, to say it out loud, then you yourself really have not truly mastered it. And that's a principle that Chazal have in general, something we find in psychology to be true, that reciting something after it's learned is a very important key towards remembering. And therefore here, the Kohen, he learns from the Zakenim, and then they say to him, well, if just because we taught you that's not going to do it, you have to tell us, you have to recite it to us, make sure you really know it, because perhaps you forgot about it, or perhaps you never learned it at all. In addition, the fact that we're worried about this for the Kohen Gadol is also surprising. We discussed briefly in the first Mishnah about the role of the Kohen Gadol, how ideally the Kohen Gadol is the Kohen Gadol me'achav. He's the greatest of all Kohanim, and therefore he gets his special status as Kohen Gadol, and he's obviously a Talmid Chacham, and he's learned, and he's righteous, and all these great things. But unfortunately, throughout Jewish history, there were Kohanim Gedolim who didn't exhibit these traits, but rather were appointed by the king. They paid, or they had political connections to be able to become the Kohen Gadol. So therefore, if that would be true, that comes up again and again in this parak, but in this Mishnah pretty clearly, that the Kohen Gadol, just because he's Kohen Gadol, doesn't mean he knows everything. You can have a Kohen Gadol he gets into that position without knowing what to do, and therefore he has to be taught before Yom Kippur comes. Specifically, has to have Zakenim come in order to teach him what to do. Okay, so that's the during that week. The final step, in addition to everything the previous two Mishnayot, is that he would get the Seder Hayom, the order of the day. He would have read to him, and then he would recite as well in order to make sure that he has understood it. Continuing, Erev Yom HaKippurim b'Shacharit. Erev Yom HaKippurim, on the eve of Yom Kippur, b'Shacharit, in the morning. So now we're moving not the entire week, but specifically that last day, the last day right before Yom Kippur. Ma'amidin oto b'shar hamizrach. We stand him, we bring the Kohen Hagadol to the Shar HaMizrach, to the eastern gate of the Beit HaMikdash, to a specific area on the east side of the Beit HaMikdash. What would happen over there? Uma'avir and lefanav, and they would pass in front of him, they'd lead in front of him, parim ve'elim ukvasim, oxen, rams, and sheep. So these three different types of animals, they would all pass in front of the Kohen Gadol. Why? Kedei shehe makir v'ragil ba'avodah. Kedei, in order that shehe, he will be makir, he will recognize, and the ragil, and it will be something normal, something natural, something automatic for him, the avodah, the service that he has to do. Again, like as we were saying earlier, showing this is a Kohen Gadol, is not someone that we rely on his knowledge, on his experience, as one would normally assume you could for a Kohen Gadol, but rather you need to really show him everything to do to make sure that he's going to do it correctly. So after we teach him what it said from the text, we then need to go and to actually bring the animals in front of him in order that he'll be familiar with these animals. The Gemara explains that the area on the east had a lower level of holiness than the rest of the Har HaBayit, the rest of the area of the Beit HaMikdash itself, and therefore that was the place where before Yom Kippur he would go in order to sort of be prepared for the avodah that he is going to do. So again, this Erev Yom HaKippurim, the day before Yom Kippur v'Shacharit in the morning. They wouldn't do it the entire week before, as we learned last time. The entire week before he would bring korbanot, so he was getting used to it in that sense. And here they'd bring in front of him to the Shar HaMizrach, parim ve'elim ukvasim, the ox and the rams and the sheep, the different animals that would be used for different korbanot of the day. There are many korbanot, as you mentioned, the korban chatat, there's a chatat for the Kohen, a chatat for the Kohen's family, then for all the Kohanim, then for all of Bnei Yisrael, and all these were different kinds of animals that would be brought, and therefore it's important for some of the animals to be shown in front of him at this point, so that way he was able to be familiar with the different animals. He know which one is part of a chatat for him, part of a chatat for Bnei Yisrael, how many to bring. The Karban Musaf was also brought during that day, so he knew exactly which animal was going to be used for what Karban before he started, and he would feel very conversant, very comfortable in using these animals. Okay, so that's Mishnah Gimel regarding this next step of how they would prepare the Kohen Hagadol for the day of Yom Kippur that's coming up. Mishnah Daled. Mishnah Daled is again referring to the preparation. Mishnah is as follows: Kol Shiv'at Hayamim, all 7 days that a Kohen would, all 7 days, that again these 7 days that he's preparing to do the avodah in the Beit HaMikdash, lo hayimonim mimenu ma'achal u'mishtah, they wouldn't hold back from him in any way, ma'achal u'mishtah, food or drink, right? Ma'achal like ochal, mishtah like shotem used to drink. So all 7 days, whatever he wanted to eat, he can eat. There were no limitations on his eating, as we learned earlier. He would bring the karbanot, he would eat a part of the karban, there was no reason to restrict his eating. However, Erev Yom Kippurim, so again parallel to the last Mishnah, where you had what you would do the entire week, then Erev Yom Kippur, when you start getting closer to Avodah, things start getting more serious, you have to be more careful. Im Chashecha, as it started to become dark, meaning the night is of course the night, not the night of Yom Kippur itself, the night before that, on Erev Yom Kippur, as it would become dark towards nightfall, Lo hayu menechinoto lachol harbe. They would not allow him to eat a lot of food. They would limit how much he could eat. Shamachal mevi et hashena, because eating, if one tends to eat a lot of food, then one tends to get tired, and then he would fall asleep. If he would fall asleep, as we'll learn in the Mishnah coming up, the night before Yom Kippur, then of Yom Kippur, we would try to keep the Kohen Gadol awake. The reason being that when one is asleep, he could become tamei, specifically through becoming a Baal Keri, through having a seminal emission during the night, that makes one tamei for one day. So if one's tamei for one day during the 7 days, that's not a big deal. You go to mikveh, become tahor, that's okay. But if he would become tamei during his sleep overnight, he would become a Baal Keri and become tamei, so then he would have a problem, because he would be tamei when Yom Kippur begins, and therefore we want to make sure that doesn't happen, and therefore we want to prevent him from sleeping immediately before Yom Kippur, because that would that raise the possibility that again he would have a seminal mission, become what we call a Baal Keri, and become tamei. So that last night, right before Yom Kippur, they would not allow him to eat too much, that way he wouldn't become tamei. If he become tamei, he wouldn't be able to do the avodah. So that's going to be the last step that we have here in this Mishnah of the preparation, of making sure that he wouldn't eat too much. So just to review, what we learned is Mishnah Gimel, the zakenim that would be brought to him in order to review the halachot. He would know exactly what he was doing on Yom Kippur. They would bring the animals in front of him to familiarize himself with the animals, in order that he would be very familiar to do the avodah on Yom Kippur. And then for those 7 days he could eat, and barring the last night they would not feed him, they would not allow him to eat too much food, in order that he wouldn't become tamei during that night, and to ensure that he'd be able to be available to do the avodah in the Beit HaMikdash on Yom Kippur. Thank you very much. Any questions, please feel free to be in touch. You could email me jmintz@rkyhs.org. All the best.